Did you know? When on paper, the script for a single episode of Telltale's The Walking Dead stacks nearly a foot tall. One of the writers for The Walking Dead games, Gary Whitta, also wrote the film The Book of Eli and part of Star Wars Rogue One. According to Whitta, a typical The Walking Dead script is the length of at least 2 feature films because of all the branching paths. The Walking Dead was once planned to have a black and white art style, so it would resemble The Walking Dead comics. As development progressed, the black and white graphics felt incomplete and didn't translate well from sketches to a 3D environment. During the planning stages for the story of Season 1, there was a subplot involving the Mafia chasing after the player and Clementine. According to lead designer Jake Rodkin, a solid 6 hours of this storyline was ultimately cut before production. The player protagonist also wasn't going to be Lee in early drafts. The player originally took control of Clementine's older brother. Telltale went with Lee instead, as it's easier for the player to connect with the lead characters when they can experience their relationship growing naturally over the course of the game, instead of the player witnessing their relationship through flashbacks. Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman was given ultimate control of the game's story, but decided not to take it. He trusted Telltale's judgment and told them that all they needed to do was make people hug and cry and shit. However, both Telltale and Kirkman agreed from day one that the game needed a story that did not focus on Rick Grimes, like the comic and the TV series. This was so that fans of the series wouldn't know the story ahead of time. It also allowed the game to directly interact with the storyline of the comic book by taking place when Rick is in a coma. Even though Lee is heroic like Rick, Telltale created the character's backstory to be almost the opposite of Rick's. Where Rick is a police officer and the world recognizes him as good, Lee is a convicted criminal and the world sees him as bad. The writers saw it as a challenge to see if they could get players to be on Lee's side. At first, Telltale was unsure about having Clementine in the game. They feared players would find the child annoying or bratty and wouldn't want to protect her. Casting a voice actress for Clementine was a challenge as well. In an interview with Game Informer, lead writer Sean Veneman stated that if he went back to the planning stages, he wouldn't have chosen a young girl. Veneman said, "I remember sitting down with Dan, the head of Telltale, and saying, we might have really bungled this, because if we can't find her, the whole thing is gonna fall apart. There was a lot of anxiety and it was a big risk." Telltale had actual young girls come in to try for the part, but they found the children struggled to understand the subtext of what was going on. Sean Veneman described finding Melissa Hutchinson to play Clementine as her flying down from the heavens to save us. The voice actor for Lee, Dave Fennoy, is famous for being the announcer for the streaming service Hulu, but surprisingly, he wasn't Telltale's first choice for the part. The entire first episode was recorded with a different voice actor playing Lee, but the team felt the character needed more emotional depth. Telltale turned to Dave Fennoy, as they'd previously worked with him on Law & Order Legacies.
I stay away from all bureaucrats, sacred and secular.
As an actor, Fennoy is very fond of his role as Lee, and he grew emotionally attached to the character. During his final recording session for the end of episode 5, Fennoy legitimately cried during his performance. The voice actor for Larry, Terry McGovern, had previously voiced Launchpad in Disney's DuckTales. He also voiced one of the stormtroopers in the original Star Wars. In an episode of Telltale's Playing Dead, McGovern revealed that he based Larry's voice on George C. Scott's portrayal of General Buck Turgidson in Dr. Strangelove.
It's an obvious commie trick, Mr. President. We're wasting valuable time. Look at the boy. They're getting ready to clobber.
We let someone with a bite stay in, and we all end up bitten.
Comedian Kumail Nanjiani joined the cast of Season 2 as Reggie because he was a big fan of this series. He reached out to lead writer Gary Whitta for an interview on his podcast, The Indoor Kids. In return, Telltale asked him to audition for a role in the game.
That was awkward. I won't do that again.
Hollywood actor Michael Madsen was brought in as the voice of William Carver in Season 2 after asking his manager to find him more roles in games.
Killing one in order to save many is part of survival.
He became interested in video game voice work watching his sons play modern games. Kenny was originally set to die in Season 1, Episode 5, but the developers decided to keep him alive at the last minute. Voice actor Gavin Hammond even recorded Kenny's death screams. Hammond didn't find out Kenny wasn't dead until the rap party for Season 1, when a developer told him that all his death audio was deleted. Each episode of The Walking Dead was released as soon as they were finished, so developers at Telltale Games were able to use analytics to change the story in future episodes and tailor the game by audience reaction. Telltale wanted most major decisions to be a moral dilemma, and they considered it a success when there was a 50-50 split in player decisions. Some of the results were not what they expected. One example is the decision to kill Andy in episode 2. Only 20% of players chose to kill Andy, and the line chart for how many times the player punched Andy showed 2 major peaks. Many players stopped when the camera changed to a wide shot and revealed the other characters were watching the violence. But a majority of those who didn't stop kept punching Andy until he died. In episode 5, if the player talks to Kenny 5 times in a row, Lee will walk away and reference Randy Tudor, the lead programmer at Telltale Games.
Randy Tudor. Good man. Damn fine man. Powerful stash. one of the greats.
This Easter egg is repeated verbatim by Jesus in Season 3, Episode 3. In Episode 1, Telltale developers were surprised that most players chose to save Carly over Doug. Doug was actually based on the real IT specialist at Telltale Games, Doug Tobacco. The team's writers had a heated debate about who players would save, or as Gary Whitta phrased it, the hot chick or the fat dude. Fans actually started a popular Facebook campaign called Save Doug to try to convince other players to rescue Doug instead of Carly. Some of the decisions in the game were added as a mirror of previous moral dilemmas to give players a chance to grow or change their minds. In Season 2, Episode 4, the decision of whether or not to steal the pills was intentionally set up to reflect back on Season 1, when Lee was given the choice of whether or not to steal the food from the car. One player decision that was ultimately removed from the game could have drastically changed the rest of the story. At the end of Season 2, they considered allowing players to leave AJ behind and end the game alone. There was a lot of discussion about it, but the team decided Clementine wasn't that cold-hearted yet, so it wouldn't have even been a question for her. The developers of The Walking Dead included a few hidden Easter eggs and references to other Skybound and Telltale series throughout the game. In Episode 3, there's a bottle of Benang in a cup holder of a vehicle. This drink is a reference to Sam and Max Beyond Time and Space. The fictional drink also appeared in subsequent episodes of The Walking Dead, as well as other games by Telltale. In a background conversation in Season 1, Duck describes a comic he read called Super Dinosaur. This is a reference to another comic written by creator of The Walking Dead Robert Kirkman. There are also leftover material in The Walking Dead from Telltale's CSI games. Data miners found assets belonging to a character called Nick Stokes, one of the main characters from CSI. Did you also know that the entire development team for Lego Island were fired a day before the game released? For more facts, check out the Did You Know Gaming video on Lego games. Oh, and I was hoping to have a new Dracula video here, but we'll have to make do with the Ninja Turtles one. Next closest thing. Check it out.